And these are all common findings. Do you see the logic in it? These are all findings that we know on a daily basis. It goes to the structure of any organization. It does not really give anyone an information regarding the corrupt practices that are happening. No one, because if you tell anyone, the commissioners, for example, that the contracts committee failed to appoint members of the contracts committee, it may appear as if it is only an organizational problem, a structural problem, a failure in an administrative responsibility. That has nothing to do with corruption. Someone may fail on their responsibility, but they are not corrupt or not doing financial mismanagement in any way. Do you see my point?
Council, I agree.
Yes, let me just learn. Now, throughout the SPU, they fail to do this, they fail to do that, here and there. That will not give us the information, or any person that may have access to the report, but will give us an idea about the nature of the transaction and where the public funds are being diverted to. It is a specific findings. Mr. Jaita, is that not correct?
Correct.
It's specific findings.
You are right.
Yes. And that is where we don't have. You know why I asked that question? Because on page 17, even these transactions that have been listed as being above the threshold. You know, being above the threshold is only one aspect of a finding. But a transaction can be above the threshold for single sourcing, but they're still being approved by a contracts committee, for example. They have gone through all the proper channels of single sourcing. But the only information we have on page 17 is that $430,000 is being spent on spare parts in 2018. $100,000 in 2019 on spare parts, $68,000 in 2019 again on spare parts. In December, there were two spendings, $100,000 and $68,000 on spare parts. The only information we have is that they are above the threshold for single sourcing. That does not mean that there were foul plays or a total disregard of any. Because you said to us that a single source can actually follow due process regardless of the fact that it is above the threshold.
Good.
Is that not the case?
Yes.
So this doesn't tell us anything.
Exactly.
So if you turn to the specific findings, they didn't even give us details about these three.
Good.
What do you have to say to that?
Council, we agree that the number that we have chosen to represent, for example, the total number of single sources is too small.
And but also that there ought to have been adequate information regarding these three outlined single sourcing above the threshold.
Okay. But Council, I also wanted to, of course, also use that opportunity to make some clarifications as being reported. I don't know whether that is acceptable or not, because we've had that over the media or the online newspapers that GPPA said in a particular transaction or a particular area council over 400 and something, but again GPPA said that this is the number that which has never been the case. So I also want to use that opportunity to make that clarification so that when reporting is being made, ensure that the right thing is reported. Otherwise, it seems as if we're going to mislead the population. It's misleading.
So what I wanted to say, maybe after the chairman will address the situation, is that I don't put trial on the media. In as much as the media is very important, we deal with facts here. And the evidence we solicit from GPPA are in the public records. The commissioners have these records. As far as I am concerned, what the public will say and how anything is being perceived, or whosoever wants to prove any point, they may come and establish any position here. Now, people are entitled to their opinion, but we don't conduct public trials. What I mean by that is media trial. We don't really, I don't answer questions regarding what has been said in the media, but then the commissioners may have to say something about it. But I understand your concerns. The evidence you have given are on record. If anyone is interested, they can come and find the record itself. And if anyone feels aggrieved or they feel aggrieved about any finding or any evidence being adduced here, they may come and have the evidence being contradicted, but as far as I'm concerned, it goes no issue. Yes, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Council. Actually, you've answered. That is what I wanted to say to Mr. Sanyan. We are trying to conduct the assignment given to us as per the law. And what we are looking at are documents that are presented to us. And we should confine ourselves to discussing the issues that are before us and making sure that what is being discussed here is what is contained in the documents that are presented to us. And going forward, I will further want to ask question on page 17. Page 17, the dates noted under the single procurement, which is above the threshold, if you could realize, the report is dealing with the years ending 2020 and 2021. And the dates these transactions fall under is 2018-2019 for both transactions. Now my question is, we are not availed the opportunity to know which of these transactions that you have reviewed were conducted in 2020 and in 2021. Because what we have seen on the record is transaction conducted 2018 and 2019. And the period under review is 2020-2021. Yes, you may refer to 2018 or 2019, but nowhere in the report have we seen issues highlighted of transactions that were conducted in 2020 and in 2021. Okay. That too, it's a concern because that is the period under review, and you are not telling us anything that transpired within that year. Okay. So if there is any information that you can avail this commission, please do. With respect to the transactions of what you have noted in your metrics. The 3,100 total number of transactions that were done. Is this cumulative, or because even this one we are not told whether this was a single transaction for 2020 or a cumulative transaction of 2020 and 2021?
As of now, I cannot. I have to go back to the review team and our raw data.
Yes. Please confirm whether this is a cumulative number or it's just a single number for one single year. Okay. Thank you. Council, you may proceed.
Yes. Again, we come back to the compliance review for 2020 and 2021 on page 18. Yes. And I will just, yes. And I will also just urge you to just limit yourself to just focus on the evidence.
Okay.
And the report, please. All right?
Okay.
Pre-qualification and registration of suppliers.
Yes.
What do we have on that on page 18?
As stipulated in Section 24 of the GPPA Amendment Act 2018, suppliers shall be registered with the authority as a prerequisite for eligibility for award of public contracts. The team observed that most of the contract awards to suppliers were found to be not registered with the authority.
Yes. Do we have a list? Do we have a list with respect to this report as to who these suppliers are that failed to register with GPPA?
Okay. Not in this report. We can provide the commission with it.
Yes. Again, I know we have already told you this, but then, and I'm sure there will be improvements, Mr. Jaite. So it is more proper, is it not, where you there's a reference to a certain number or a certain list, then you provide the evidence so that people will know that these individuals did not register with GPPA, because it is very serious, is it not? Because there are implications of non-registration. Is that not the case? You have it on page 19. Ranging from tax issues. Is that not the case?
Page 19.
the non-implication of failure to register with GPA. I mean, these are common implications.
Yes, yes, yes.
Tax is one of them, which will cause financial loss, which you have stated in some of the reports,
exactly,
in relation to dealing with suppliers that do not register with GPA. In fact, in Kuntaur, it's not an issue of having 1 or 2 or 3. You are saying out of the 3,000 plus transactions, most of the suppliers did not have registration with GPA. Is that not the case?
Yes, yes.
Do you have any response from the management?
No, no management response.
Now, page 19, 3.11.3 on specifications. What is the finding on that?
Three point
11.1, where you have, however, technical specifications was not generated in most of the request for quotations.
The reviewed procurement proceedings were observed that all the transactions are not having technical specifications attached to the transactions of the item, which is not in accordance to GPPA Act 2018, Section 25(1), 2, 3, 4. However, technical specification was not generated in most of the requests for quotation and single source procurement.
Now, in summary, with respect to the general findings, what will be your overall assessment with respect to the general findings? Was there a compliant, were they complying with their obligation as per the law?
Actually, as you may see, our rating is a range. But if I am to conclude based on the report, it may suggest that the Council is non-compliant to the provisions of the law during the period under review.
Now on chapter 4, where you have the specific findings.
Page
22.
Page 22. Yes.
Now let's look at the introduction part. This section presents the specific findings on the procurement transactions that were reviewed from the list of total procurements that the Kuntaur Area Council carried out in financial year 2019 and 2019 to December 31st December 2019. So it means the ones that we have been shown in this report, these 3 transactions, is only with respect to 2019. But then the report, if you look at it, suggests that the compliance review for the year ended 1st January is for 2020 and 2021. So I'm a bit confused here.
Yes, it's inconsistent with the reports, and we'll try to correct that and see.
So you have more than 3,000 transactions for 2020 and 2021, but you have 3 samples with respect to the specific findings, and these transactions are for 2019. So yes. What do we have for 2020 and 2021?
I want to believe that it's supposed to be the period under review.
What period?
That is 2020, 2021.
Yes, it's the period under review. So why do we have in the introductory part telling us that the findings for under chapter 4 are for 2019?
It must be inconsistencies. Anyway.
And what is the reason or the justification of the inconsistency?
The reasons for these inconsistencies.
So we don't have anything for 2020? I am just only going by the report. I am not trying to, I cannot give reasons for GPPA maybe try to suggest that maybe it's a typographical error or it's a copy and paste. I go by the report, right? So we can only discuss what we see. Yes, Mr. Yanka, what can you tell us about that?
Actually, yeah.
The reasons for the inconsistencies, we can only assume as now that could be due to various reasons, as we've mentioned before. Could be inconsistent. It could be incompetence. Could be a mistake. It could be copy and paste. It could be a collusive practice. It could be corruption. It could be anything.
Yes, that's true, Sujete. And if you're under any investigation and where you have public funds being misused, if at all there was due process being followed by the organizations responsible, then one may want to assume that it is probably a mistake or it's probably an inconsistency here and there. But when you have a professional conducting a job and you have time and again continuous disregard of your obligation, we know there are millions and millions of dollars in procurement. We know how people can enrich themselves in procurement easily. So basically, I will not give anyone the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this basic disregard. So again, let me ask, in writing these reports, Mr. Sanyang, are there any standards set as to how these reports are? Do you have a model, some sort of wherein any compliance assistant conducting a review will have to follow to be able to come up with a very comprehensive and detailed report?
Actually, if you look at all the reports, you observe that there is a template for it.
Yes.
There is a template that each team should follow. Now, in fact, that is what is creating most of the problems that we are seeing, in the sense that we've all agreed that most of the observations or the inconsistencies are just copy and paste. Now, if you look at, probably it's not in the interest of this commission and the like, but then the initial reports were very, very, very accurate. But as time goes on, the reviewers will started bringing citations and so on, which of course are not, we've all seen that are not consistent with some of the things that are being said. So we have a template, and of course we have a reviewing sort of procedure where, like I said earlier, the teams will be divided with a team leader and somebody identified to write the report. So when they review, they write reports, and then at their own level, they will conduct peer reviews where the report will be circulated among themselves, and then from there it may go to the managers and then directors, and finally to the Director General.
Now,
the citation for at page 23 is also wrong, correct?
Page 23.
23, yes. The citation for the first bullet point, which is purchase order was raised by the end user department as stipulated in regulation 28 of the GPPR and section 12(7)(b) and 2 of the GPPA Act. Do you see that? Section 28 of the regulation is saying something different.
That's supposed to be under non-compliant.
Yes.
The procurement documentation were not completed because there were no forms?
No. At page 23, the first bullet point, at the very top.
Yes, purchase order was raised.
by the end user department as stipulated in regulation 28 of, I have issues with the regulation that is cited as being a wrong regulation.
Yes, I think it's wrong. Regulation 28.
Regulation 28 is referring to registration for purposes of preference schemes.
Yes, yes, it's wrong.
Thank you.
This citation is wrong. Yes.
And so also is
yes, yes.
35.
Yes.
Thank you. Council, you may proceed.
Yes, so let us now just look at the three examples of the findings. Yes, you had the procurement of fuel, $6,072 from Jar Oil through single sourcing. The non-compliant issues, the procurement of the documentations, the procurement documentations were not completed because there was no forms of the authority attached. There was no delivery receipt. There was no inspections committee. Now, you have the second one on page 24, procurement of spare parts, $5,100 from Drame Kunda. No purchase order, no forms attached or filled, no minutes of contract committee approving the transaction, no delivery receipt. And the last one, $45,000 from one Keba Jata, procurement of spare parts. Above, you said is within the threshold. It's through RFQ. But if you look at the non-compliance, there was no minutes of the contracts committee meeting as stipulated in the regulation. Now,
so before you proceed, Council, we don't know what is the heading for the procurement of spare parts because it only indicated tender number 1, and you know some of the bullet points refer to non-compliant issues. Some are compliant issues, but my issue is bullet point 1. The citations are also wrong because it is saying that purchase order was raised by the end user department as stipulated in regulation 28 of the regulations. And it further went on to say that the purchase order was completed and signed by both parties. Did you see that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So it is wrong, right?
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you. And then the implication is that it indicated that there is a weak contract administration. It's an invitation to corrupt practices. Bullet point 2, it is saying fraudulent practices are imminent. Here, we are not being told exactly what is the situation. Because the statement is just a general statement. So it's not derived from the conclusions of what they have found. Can you explain that?
Yes, I think the statements are so generalized because there are certain things, definitely if there is no transparency, there is no fair play and the like, and the right procedure is not followed, it can lead to corruption, it can lead to not getting value for money and so on. And to prove corruption is another step. You can only suspect that there is, given the practices or the procedures followed or the procedures that are taken, it can lead to X, Y, and Z, and then another step can be to prove that there has been corruption and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think you are very right, but then as an oversight institution, basically what you're only tasked to do is to conduct your findings, what you find on the ground, and narrate or explain or report them as you find them. Now it is left for any investigative body like this commission or a court or any institution set up to investigate that specific action. So the issue is, if it is not well reported or well documented, it will only make the job of any investigation body extra difficult. And that is where you have the word that Mr. Jere used always, collusion. Cover up, trying to bury evidence. I said this time and again. So you know that if you don't report this thing, it will be hard to trace, and therefore that's it. So that's why I said you keep on reporting on the general findings. We only see it as an administrative lapse. Someone maybe not be competent to do something. So incompetence and corruption or fraudulent misappropriation of funds are totally different. You may have the two intertwined, but you may also have them disjoint. So that if you are colluding with the very person or institution you are supposed to have an oversight function and then investigate them with respect to their actions, you're only as bad and as corrupt as the very culprit that you're supposed to perform your oversight function on. But again, those who conduct these investigations, they are not any other person, but they are not just any other individual or individuals. You see the traces. So that's why I said I would not want to believe it is by a mere mistake when the mistake is being repeated. When you have a repeated mistake action, it can only lead to possible collusion. Maybe you will receive bribery to just suppress evidence. But it's not like it's not there. It's there, but you did not just report on it. You refuse to give information in the form of the report. So that's what you have in most of these reports. So we now look at the compliance review for the year ended 1st January 20 to 31st December 2022 for Kuntaur Area Council. The date is 24th August 2022. Are you there with me?
Yes.
Now on page 5, those in attendance in the entry meeting, you have Modo Sambu, the CEO of Kuntaur Area Council.
Correct.
Mamadi Kamara, the procurement officer.
Correct.
Momodu Njai, internal audit. Musa Samura, clerk, council. Abdullah Keita, the finance manager. Members of the compliance review team, you have Burang Kongira, Lamin FS Sambu, Mohamed Sawane, and Awa Suso. They are all compliance assistants, is correct?
Correct.
And the documents on the review, you have the procurement plan, purchase requirements, requisitions, requests for quotations, and direct procurement, that is the payment vouchers. So under the staff directly involved in the review process, those that were interviewed, Mamadou Sambo, CEO, Mamadi Kamara, procurement officer, and the finance manager, Abdullah Kaita. Is that correct? Now turn to page 7 and guide us through the table with respect to the procurement conducted and their value for 2022.
Thank you. Now, like the other table that we have just completed, this also doesn't have anything for other procurement methods like open tender, restricted tender, and the like. So this table starts with single sources. And the total of 258 transactions, which amounted to 94%, value 1,908,645.08, and this is about 39% of the total transactions. Then you have requests for quotations, 11 transactions altogether, which is 49%. 4%, amounting to 1,578,976.00, and this is about 32% of the total value. So you have restricted tender This time around, restricted tender, 3 transactions, which is 1% of the total number of transactions, amounting to 1,444,334.00, and this is 29% of the total value. So the total transactions is
4,931,000.
Yes, the value and the value and the total number of transactions is about 272 transactions.
Yes. Again, the last paragraph, you said that there are series of procurements conducted, but there was no evidence to show that there were 3 quotations attached to the said payment vouchers.
Correct.
And you also referred us to an annex, but that again is not found on the report.
Yes.
Now, let's look at the organogram of the council. It is the same one we have for 2020.
Yes.
Where do you have the procurement unit?
The procurement is on the last row.
Under the CEO?
Yes, under the CEO.
Right. Now, the same thing with the SPU. 2020, 2021, we see the common problems with respect to the SPU. So again, on page 9, we observe that the SPU are not involved in most of the procurement transactions reviewed for the year under review. So it's the same process. Do you follow?
Yes, yes.
You know, we have reviewed 2020 and 2021 with respect to the findings, with respect to the SPU, the contracts committee, the CEO's mandate or role, and where they fail to execute their functions. The lack of inspections committee, the lack of evaluation committee. So we see the same problem again with the SPU, that most of the time they do not engage in procurement activities. Is that not correct?
Correct.
Let's go to page 10 and see the functions of the contracts committee.
Functions of the contracts committee.
The non-compliance issues is the same as well. The first, that the CEO did not ensure that the area council submits their annual procurement plan. So we have seen that in the previous years. Is that not the case?
Yes, correct.
That the CEO did not appoint members of the inspections and acceptance committee as well. So it's more of a repetition.
Correct.
And again, he or she does not ensure that the procuring organization properly documents procurement proceedings.
Correct.
And that he doesn't ensure that all procurements are done by the SPU. We find, if we found out procurement which was done by non-members within Kuntaur area council, do we have a list of that?
No.
Because this part is saying that there were procurement conducted by members of council probably who are not part of the SPU. Is that not what it is trying to suggest?
Yes, yes.
And then we don't have a list with respect to who these people are.
Yes.
But then here we have been told by the team that they in fact did find out the list. They in fact know the members that are engaged in procurement, and those members are not part of the SPU, but they fail to tell us who these members or who these individuals are.
Correct.
Mr. Sayang, did you not notice these things during the review of these reports?
Well, we didn't.
And that was why I said maybe you failed to review this time around. Turn to page 11. Who are the members of the procurement clerk, the procurement unit?
One, you have Mr. Mamadi Kamara, I suppose, Mamadi Kamara. procurement officer.
So you only have a name. You didn't give us a surname.
His surname is missing.
And the title is procurement officer. Qualification level 1. Ongoing studies GPPI level 1. Training none. And he is probably the only individual in the procurement department. Is that the case?
Yes.
And if you turn to page 12, the common issues with respect to the procurement department, that the monthly reports are not being submitted to the authority, no prior approvals. So this prior approval, is it the role of the contracts committee or the role of the SPU?
Prior approvals should be done by the contracts committee.
So why do we have it on a non-compliance for the SPU? But I understand it is a role of the contracts committee.
The SPU probably must have continued the transactions without getting the approval from the right.
But we are told by the same report that they do not conduct most of the transactions as well for Kuntaur.
Exactly, yes.
Are your people doing their job? Really? GPPA, is your staff, are they doing their job? I'm just saying, if you want to be very fair, do you think we have really the staff conducting due diligence in relation to their task? They are not.
I don't think so.
Now, market surveys. Again, no market surveys for Kuntaur Area Council. You will see that on the recommendation that the SPU should ensure a periodic market survey is carried out and inform the contracts committee accordingly. So again, all these general findings are just standards that they should follow by virtue of it being mandatory according to the laws that govern procurement in this country. Is that not the case?
Correct.
But what we see is continuous flouting of the laws and the regulations, right?
Correct.
Functions of the contracts committee on page 12. You turn to page 13. The members, you see that 96% of the procurement transactions are done in direct procurement, a single procurement source, which we see as not the most competitive and method in procurement, and the steps for the use of single source were not completed. So we have been saying that it is one of the methods of procurement being abused endlessly, because probably it is more prone to corrupt practices and financial misappropriations or fraudulent activities. So therefore, we know why they prefer single sourcing in most of the transactions, which you have always advised against. Is that not the case?
Correct.
Now the contract committee members, who are they for the year under review?
Modu Sambu, CEO.
Modu Sambu is the CEO, and
Sekou Jawara, chairman, who is also the chairman to the...
So he doubles as the chairman of both the area council and the contracts committee.
Correct. Moro Keta, finance director, and you have Mamadi Kamara, procurement clerk.
Procurement clerk. Now, what were the non-compliance findings?
The contract committee did not ensure that monthly reports are submitted to the authority. The contracts committee did not ensure that the approved threshold by management is adhered
to. But how about minutes? Do they sit? Do they have minutes? We know that they are not being formally appointed, in fact. But do they have minutes? We also know that this is one fundamental role of the contracts committee. But you only find that on page 14, on the functions of the evaluation committee, which they put in bracket the contracts committee. But we see that they don't also have minutes of their meetings as well, on page 14. Do you see that?
Page 14.
Functions of the evaluation committee.
Yes. Findings. This function is carried out by the contracts committee as required by the Act Section 47. 49, but the contrast committee members during the period under review were not evaluating the procurement transactions and generate minutes.
So in all the transactions through single sourcing, the 3 tenders and also the RFQs, the request for quotation transactions, there was no evaluation done. So we wouldn't even know whether, if it were goods, whether they were even being supplied. If it is fuel, whether it was actually being purchased and delivered, or any other transaction, whether there had been delivery of whatever form. We would not know. And again, examination and receipt committee as well, there was none since 2020. Is that not the case?
Correct.
Now, records keeping on 16, page 16. It is the same problem from 2020 and 2021.
Yes.
The records are not adequate, they are not properly filed, and the purchase orders were not signed by the supplier for the most part, and also the contrast committee this time around. So you only have a purchase order being raised but not signed by either party. You also have the issues of files that are being missing or being suppressed, let me say. You turn to page 17, the procurement planning. Was there a procurement plan for this year round? We know that there was none for 2020 and 2021 for Kuntaur Area Council. Do they have a procurement plan for 2022?
Yes,
that's supposed to be, yes, 3.9.0.
Yes.
Yes, Section 29 of the GPPA Amendment Act dictates that procuring organizations shall engage in procurement planning with a view to achieving maximum value for money in public procurement or expenditure, and the other objectives set out in Section 3 and in accordance with the applicable budgetary procedures. The observations are, we observe that direct procurement that are above the threshold of single sourcing, which the procurement organization or procuring organization should request a prior approval from the authority before conducting the procurement.
Yes, Madam Chairperson.
Yes, I know with this report. No, I'm following through.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Now, yes.
Yes, I think we could, if you're done with this, I think we are left with just Janjanbureh, which we can done before.
Yes.
Can be done before we go for lunch break.
Absolutely.
Yes. So that when we come back, we will be dealing with the files, and lead counsel will take us through that.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Now, the same problem with respect to the pre-qualification and registration of suppliers. Do you see that? In 2020, we have suppliers that failed to register with GPPA.
Yes.
The same in 2021. And again, 2021 on page 17, we were told that the team observed that most of the contract awards to suppliers were found to be not registered with the authority again. But then we don't have a list of these suppliers that failed to register with GPA. So all of these findings, these are very, very key, Mr. Sayan. We will need the list of those that failed to register with GPA for 2020, 2021, and 2022. Do you follow?
Yes.
Now, the same problem again with the specifications as well. No need to bother ourselves on that. So, for Kuntaur Area Council, the general problems, they transcend from 2020 all the way to 2022. Is that not correct? They are the same findings that you find in general findings for 2020 and 2021. Now, if you look at chapter 4, you have the introductory part. This section presents the specific findings on the procurement transactions that were reviewed from the list of total procurements that the crew carried out in the financial year 1st January 2019 to the 31st December 2019. I don't know whether you see what I am.
Yes, I have.
So the same problem.
Yes.
Now you have a 2022 report still making reference of specific findings of 2019. The same problem with respect to the 2020 report and 2021 report, still making findings, specific findings for the year 2019. So is it that they are refusing to give us adequate information with respect to the nature of the specific transactions for Kuntaur Area Council for the year under review? Is that the problem? Because we don't have anything on...
I may not suggest that they don't want to give you but they are probably is the way they write reports, their capacity and so on. But I don't think they are refusing to give you the facts, because this is a copy and paste and it's not been corrected. So for me, I want to believe that is the quality of staff that we have, not actually trying to hide. That is my own suggestion, my own analysis of the whole situation.
But what is difficult in trying to give us some adequate samples of transactions for a particular year? I don't see any incompetence in that.
Now, the incompetency will make them lazy to probably go in for all these things. To me, that is my own, again, suggestion.
Then the incompetency must have been very, very bad, Mr. Saham. Really. You are trying to suggest that they do not even have any form of qualification at all to even conduct any function of this nature, no matter how minor it is. Because you may not be competent enough to kind of from a certain transactions based on the level of the transaction, but to be incompetent not to even be able to know that you have to give a fair representation and give samples with respect to findings. That will probably need you guys to do an overhaul then. So Jeta?
Yes, director is referring to me, say maybe DG. No, like I said, there are so many factors. One can, excuse me, one can't even know where to start with the poor performance we have seen in the reports. It's a combination of almost everything that we've been talking about. The reports are absolutely very, very poor. That is a fact. It's outside. You've been able to lay that plainly on the table. And I think it's also a failure of management, of which I am part, and I'm the head of management. Some of these reports, it seems, have not been supervised, have not. So the directors have not done their work to supervise the reports, go through the reports. So it's the director general as well. And so. Yes, you just said that maybe we need a complete overhaul. Probably we need a complete overhaul.
Absolutely. So on chapter 4, the first sample is the procurement of fuel for an amount of $87,715 from Jar Oil through single sourcing. Non-compliance, the procurement documentations were not complete. Procurement is above the threshold. There was no delivery receipt to show that the procurement was completed, hence it was not attached. You have the second one, procurement of installation of solar. Goods is a category, the amount $135,000. Award contractor Unique Energy through single sourcing. Non-compliance, purchase order was raised, you said, by the end user department. The procurement is above the threshold of single source. This should be under non-compliance. The procurement documentation as GPA Form 103 were not attached. No minutes of the contracts committee. You have the procurement of stationaries, $24,000 from one Keraba stationery. You said there was no minutes of the contracts committee. The forms were not administered properly. No delivery receipt. No inspections committee. There was no evidence of negotiation. So these are the 3 or 4 that we have. And they were scored 40%. Mr. Sayang, I hope you wouldn't score them 20% in actual sense, or even 15. Because this is just so poor for Kuntaur Area Council. If there are any comments, Honorable Commissioners, I will take them before we move to Janjanbureh. We have 2 reports for Janjanbureh Area Council.
Yes, Council, we can proceed. Do you have any comment?
Can you turn to page, the report for Janjanbureh Area Council for 2019, December 2019. Are you there already?
Yes.
Tell us those in the entry meeting.
Sambali, CEO. Buba Mane, Finance Director. Maria Tukande, Procurement Clerk. Dauda Sama, Finance Manager. And then you have GPPA Review Team. Momodou K. Jallo, Assistant Operations and Policy Officer. Babkar Seka, Compliance Assistant, and Barabos Mendy, Compliance Assistant.
Yes. Please tell us the staffs involved in the review process.
They are Mr. Sambali, CEO. Maria Tukande, Procurement Clerk, Uba Mane, Finance Director, and Ibrahim Janko Sane, Chairman, Janjanbureh Area Council.
Before we proceed with Janjanbureh Area Council, the one I have, it appears as if we have dealt with it. But now, let me ask you briefly, with respect to the nature of the post-review. Usually, how long do they stay when they go on treks, for example? How much of a time do these teams spend on trek to conduct these reviews?
In most cases, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks for a particular area council, or is it 2 weeks for, let's say, a particular geographical area?
2 weeks for the provincial councils in the north, and another 2 weeks for the South Bank.
South Bank.
So that will be like Kerewan, Kuntaur, and Janjanbureh for 2 weeks, and then you have Basse, Mansakonko, Basse and Mansakonko for another 2 weeks.
Now, we will come back to that. So instead of the 2019, can you be referred to the 2020 and 2021 report for Janjanbureh Area Council? Please let me know if you...
Yes, I am there.
Yes, again, let us know those in the entry meeting.
Mr. Passet Sise, Chief Executive Officer. Haruna Bari, Vice Chairman of Janjanbureh Area Council. Mr. Alaji Mane, Finance Director. Mrs. Maria
Kande, the Procurement Officer.
Maria Kande, the Procurement Officer.
And the members of your office is the team.
Yes.
Comprised of Jamila Odum, Pa Modu An, and Mohamed Sawane. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the documents you have reviewed are generally the same: the procurement plan, purchase requisitions, requests for quotations, tenders, approval requests, contract agreements, and the rest. And the number of transactions on page 6, the total procurement proceedings and their value. There were no open tender, no national open tender, no two-stated tendering, request for proposal 0, restricted tendering 0, but single source you have 448, is that correct?
Correct.
The value is $2,869,702.54 buttons. RFQ, there were 2 transactions. The value is $299,500. So the total value for the year 2020-2021 is $3,169,202.54 buttons.
Correct.
That will be for 2020. And if you turn on page 7 to 2021, there were 343 single source SIN transactions. The value is $1,526,935.6 buttons. For RFQ 15, the value of $2,467,750. So the total will be $3,994,685.6 buttons. We have the same problem with respect to having most of the transactions being through single sourcing, which is non-competitive.
Correct.
Is that not the case?
Correct.
And we were told that the team, again, they reviewed all the 358 transactions during their review process. Do you see that?
Yes.
So we have an organogram that is being shown to us on page 9. It is not very clear, but you will see in the organogram that the procurement clerk is under the director of planning and development. Do you see it?
Yes, yes.
And which we have said is very irregular. It should be under the CEO, the accounting officer. Is that not the case?
Yes.
That same report is what you find on page 10. But then they are saying that they have already rectified that during the comments section. So for the non-compliance findings for the CEO, that is the accounting officer, on page 11, you have the general findings: non-appointment of members, no setting up of committees, no proper documentation.
On page
11, the role of the accounting officer, where you have the non-compliance. You have all of them under compliance, but then he said, however, there are non-compliance practices that were identified during the compliance review. So I am saying these non-compliance are the general findings you find in almost all the area councils. They don't make appointments, they don't keep records, no minutes being kept, no setting up of the required committees, like the inspections committee and the exhibition committee. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you turn to page 12. But in the Janjanbureh area council, I see the management comment really showing some kind of commitment. I'm not sure whether they will do that subsequently, where they're saying that I assure you that before your next audit, you will prepare disposal plan and follow disposal procedures. I already appoint them, and all appointment letters are sent. Please, so do you have evidence of that? Do you?
No, no evidence. Anyway.
Can you please find out? So the team for the SPU is Mariama Kande, Title Procurement Officer, Professional GPPI Certificate and Diploma, Ongoing Training None, and you have Modu Lee, an intern. His qualification is WAEC, ongoing training none. So you said that the staff indicated as members of the SPU are staff of the SPU, but was not handling any procurement transactions of the council in the year 2020. What are you saying in the compliance findings? You are saying that the compliance unit did not handle any procurement activity for 2020? Is that what you're saying?
As the report suggests.
Yes. But it should be 2021. This report is for 2021. Now,
and Council, if you look at, if we can go back a bit at page 5, under the documents that they reviewed, they indicated, they've listed the documents. Let me just quickly go through them. It's the procurement plan, the purchase requisitions, request for quotations, tenders, approval requests, contract agreements, mandatory reports to the authorities such as monthly reports, annual single procurements, and procurements above the threshold, assets disposal report, and the approved budget of 2018. And this is a review for 2020 and 2021. So, can you cross-check whether actually a budget was presented to the reviewers for the year ending 2020-2021?
Okay.
Yes, Honorable Commissioner, that was it?
Yes. On page 12, too, you've indicated under compliance, that is the findings on functions of the SPU. You've stated that on bullet point 1, the staff indicated as members of the SPU are staff of the SPU, but was not handling any procurement transaction of the council in the year 2020. And you are indicating that that is in compliance with your regulations?
That is page, 12,
the first bullet point. It has the heading, findings on functions of the SPU. Then you have compliance.
Functions of the specialized procurement unit.
Yes.
In terms of an organizational structure.
No, page 12. Bullet point 1, the staff indicated.
The staff indicated,
yes,
as members of the SPU are staff of the SPU, but was not handling any procurement transactions as transaction of the council in the year 2020.
So these are all the issues that you said they complied with the regulations?
No, it's in compliance with the regulation. Already they are indicated as staff, but then they are supposed to, all procurement transactions should have been handled by the SPU.
Yeah.
But in this case, the staff are there, but are not handling the procurement transactions as required by the Act.
But that is not what you are stating. You are explaining what it should be, but that is not what is in the sentence. That is not what is reported.
Compliance issues. Because if you look at the sentence, it falls under, it's under compliance issues.
Yes.
It should have been under non-compliance.
Yes. That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So what has been said here is totally wrong from the heading of what it should be.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, Council.
Yes, on page 13, still on the SPU, you said on the first point that the councillors were conducting procurement in their wards without presenting procurers procured item it should be, like receipts, invoices, etc. in 2020.
That is page what? Where?
Page 13.
Page 13.
Do you see it?
Which one are you reading?
Page 13, non-compliance.
Yes.
Page 13. It is indicated on the first point. In the first point, you said that the councillors were engaged in procurement in their various wards. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the first one.
We observed that the councillors were conducting procurement in their wards without presenting procured items, in bracket, receipts, invoices, etc. Do you see it?
Yes.
The second?
Yes, Council, before you proceed, this first bullet point, the review team has made this observation, but it has not provided us with any of the activities that the councillors were involved in. It was just a statement that was made. So it is for the reader to start doing a fishing expedition to check from those numbers of procurements that were done. How much was it? What was the total that they reviewed? The total reviewed for 2020 was 450.
Yes.
Yes, and for 2021 is 358.
Yes.
In none of these transactions are we able to ascertain which of these contracts or which of these transactions were done without receipts or were done by the councillors. So how can we assess? Councillor, you may proceed.
Yes, so the second point, you said that the SPU does not prepare nor submit to the authority reports as required. These are the monthly reports. These are the monthly reports. On the second point.
That is page...
Page 13.
Okay. Page 13.
Yes, the second point, you said monthly reports are not being adhered to. Is that not the case?
Under non-compliance.
On a non-compliance?
Yes.
Yes. The second issue is that they do not comply with the monthly obligation reporting.
The SPU does not prepare nor submit to the authority reports as required under the Act and regulations in both years. The SPU does not ensure that the suppliers sign the purchase order prepared. Is it?
Yes.
Janjanbureh Area Council does not include the evaluation criteria in solicitation documents. For example, Form 101 sent to the suppliers in some procurement transactions during the year under review. The SPU does not liaise with the authority in matters relating to the disposal of assets. And finally, the head of the SPU does not act as the secretary to the contracts committee. So
all these issues, they are really serious findings with respect to the specialized procurement unit. The first being that they in fact do not really conduct most of the procurement being done for the year under review. And the report went on to say that what you have is councillors conducting these reviews in their various wards.
Correct.
Yes, and still we do not know the names of these councillors and the nature of the procurements being conducted by any of them. So we also have the problem with respect to purchase orders, that the purchase orders being raised are not being signed by either both of the parties, that is the purchaser and the supplier, or either of the party. Now you have also evaluation criteria. We know we've already spoken about this. They don't abide by that. And most of all, the contracts committee of the area council, the secretary of the contracts committee is not the head of the SPU. So please turn to the next page, 14, where you have the list of the contracts committee. You have Pasit Sisi, the CEO. He is the chairman of the contracts committee. You have Haruna Bari, the vice chairman, who is also the vice chairman of the area council. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you following?
Yes, yes.
Omar Balde, co-councillor, is a member. Mariama Kande, procurement officer, secretary.
Alaji Mane.
Alaji Mane, finance director, member. Abdullah Jallo, councillor, member. But then, with respect to the table for 2021, it is showing that in fact the head of the SPU is in fact the secretary as opposed to the non-compliance findings. How do you explain that to us?
It's an inconsistency, anyway.
Now, on page 16, there is no disposal committee. Do you see that?
Page 16.
Yes. You've outlined that there is no disposal committee.
Yes.
But then they responded by saying that in fact they have one. Is there any further response, or was there a need for that? Because maybe you may believe that they did not. Did they provide you with evidence of the establishment of a disposal committee?
Anyway, the report suggests that there is none, and they said yes. So the authority should have gone further to find out or look for evidences that there was a disposal committee.
On page 17, examination and receipt committee, none. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, the total and value of procurement methods on page 18. On page 18. I think it's the same table we have on page 6. Is that not the case?
Yes, I think so. For 2020.
For 2020.
Yes.
But for 2021, you have 343 transactions for single sourcing. Is that correct?
Yes.
The value is 1,526,935. That is 6 bottles, and 15 for RFQ. So the records keeping, the same problem for Janjanbureh Area Council for 2020 and 2021. We see that they do not have proper records keeping. The files are not properly administered. Is that not the case?
Correct.
They responded by saying, you know, we have finance department and procurement, and we are all using the same receipt and documents. But I will try and copy them to have my own copies and files, please. The procurement planning. You have found that there was no annual consolidated procurement plan for both years under review. The Janjanbureh Area Council made major adjustments in their procurement plan but was not communicated to the authority as required by the Act. The key procurement process steps, timing and costing have not been incorporated in some ideas of the planning. So you are saying that there is a consolidated plan, but it is not either been approved by the area council itself or by your authority. Do you approve these procurement plans? Do you scrutinize them and then approve them?
According to the Act,
yes,
procurement plans should be submitted to the authority not later than 15th of January of each year for approval.
For approval. So not only must they come up with a procurement plan, but it has to be approved by GPA.
Correct.
So in this case, how often do you have area councils abiding by that requirement?
Very rare.
Very rare. And then still they conduct procurement on a daily basis.
Correct.
Year in, year out.
Correct.
Now, pre-qualification and registration of suppliers. He said, having gone through some records presented for auditing, it was discovered that some contracts were awarded to suppliers who did not register with the authority of at the time of the award. Now the names are, you have one Baba General.
That's supposed to be page
21.
Okay.
Baba General, for wiring materials, $34,152. Alaji Ibra Njai, electric materials, $40,000. Sajo Ngom's General Meh, maintenance of chairman vehicle, $4,350. Bakari Cham and Co, maintenance of tractor, $8,000. Kuta Job Fuel, $8,000. Dembo Jikenki, fuel, $3,240. Jeng Welding workmanship, $35,000. Katim Ture, 93 millimeters iron rods, 9,300. Abdurrahman Marong bicycle, 1,800. So you see, you have a list. In some cases, you will have a list being given as those who did not register with GPA. And then in the area of Kawur, we see no list as well. Please take note of that. You can turn to page 23. The same problem lingers, the lack of having specifications in procurement. Do you see that?
Yes.
So all these problems, the reporting system as well, on page 26, we know that they don't also abide by the monthly reporting responsibility that they have. On page 27, we know that they don't conduct market surveys as well. We have discussed market surveys, how important it is. Is that not the case?
Correct.
Now let's go to chapter 4 on page 29.
Yeah, Council, can I please ask a quick question on page 18?
Absolutely.
Page 18, the report indicated that under the findings that during the period under review, the following methods were used for procurement proceedings: RFQ, single source, and tenders. But if you look at the table that the report provided, both for the 2020 and the 2021, there are no tenders in those metrics. In those tables. Did you see that? Page 18?
Yes, page 18.
Yes. So what could be the could be the explanation as to why we do not have tenders? Because they have clearly indicated that these were the processes that were used during the period under review, and that is not reflected on the tables that is shown. What could be the explanation, Mr. Saja?
I think it still boils down to the inaccuracy of the report.
Thank you. And if you look at page 27,
page
under
27.
Yes, under management response, they did indicate that for the bid complaints, we will try and handle it. And here, in the report, We've not seen anywhere or any transaction that has been noted for such issues. In other words, the report did not highlight complaints of certain activities that were carried on by the council and in which complaints were made. And you could see here in the management response, they have indicated that they will handle it. What are they handling? Because it's not contained in the report.
To me, what I want to believe is still the inconsistencies of our reporters. Because, yes, the law requires that there must be a complaint system when the need arises. Because unlike the asset disposal committee and the receipt and examination committee, that is clearly indicated that, and sections of the Act are even cited for that provision. But for the complaints, of course there is a section that provides for complaints which led to the emergence of the complaints review board and the like. But when there is no need for it, no complaints, is the contracts committee. So we should not have, if that is the case, because I'm not sure whether there are instances where there are complaints and the like that would have required the creation of these. But
do you think it makes sense if there were no complaints, or if there was no activity that was reviewed that had complaints, that they could come up with such out of the blues?
That is what I'm seeing, because we have not seen anywhere where it is indicated that there has been complaints.
So that will also, that explanation will also go for the findings and the response they gave on page 26. Their management response on the issue of termination of proceedings. They have also indicated that, let me just read what they said.
Which page is that?
That is on page 26. Did you see that? It says, yep, there was no termination of proceedings. That's their response. So, does it also mean that they were involved in activities in which they needed to terminate the proceedings and they failed to do so, and the review team picked up that issue, and that is why it is in the review?
There was no termination proceedings.
You may go back to 25.
Yes, I'm looking at page 25 on the termination of proceedings, and the findings are as follows. 1, there was no terminated proceeding during the period under review. The finding is like there was no terminated proceeding during the period under review. And the management response was like, yeah, there was no termination of proceedings. Meaning they are agreed to the fact that there was no proceeding was terminated.
Councillor, can you proceed, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chairperson. On chapter 4, page 29, are you there?
Page 29, yes.
Yes. That is with respect to the specific findings. Is that correct, according to your record?
Correct.
Now, the first is the procurement of 2 computer laptops from Sahara Stationery. Yes. Amount is $120,000. Now, the procurement item was not in the procurement plan. There were no minutes of the contracts committee, no deliveries to show that the procurement was completed, and that is to say that there is no evidence of delivery. Is that correct?
Correct.
No delivery received. There was no inspections committee to inspect the goods. The second one,
procurement of air condition and workmanship.
yes, No, you have the procurement document as GPA for 101 and 040, not administered, and 102. No specifications, no evaluation report. They said that they were assigned by the Attorney General of Chambers to buy these 2 laptops for the CEO and Director of Finance for IFMI's purpose, and it was urgently needed. They gave us a specification for the laptops. That's what they said in their response. So you have the next one, the procurement of air conditioner and workmanship. The amount is $350,000. The hour contractor, electric machine and supplier through RFQ. The non-compliance findings: number 1, the procured item wasn't in the procurement plan. No minutes of the contracts committee to approve the procurement. No delivery receipt. No inspections committee. No proper administration of the documents. On page 31, their response is that there was no plan for 2021, as I mentioned above. So you see, in fact, not only was there a consolidated plan, they are admitting that they did not even have a plan, a procurement plan for 2021. You know, the report suggests that they have a plan, but now what they had was an addendum to the plan, that is the consolidated plan. But they are saying they don't even have for 2021. But we were in a haste to at least have something in the office. After sitting for 2 years without being involved in the procurement process, the PO tends to forget some of these forms and procedures. That is why it was not filled, but it's well noted. She already started using them. So what they are responding to is the procurement of air conditioner and workmanship, $350,000. Yes, that's what they are responding to. For 2021, they are saying that they had sat for 2 years without being involved in procurement. What does that mean?
The report is suggesting that they have people identified as procurement officers and the like, and their role is to conduct all procurements, but they have not been involved. And that is, procurements are being conducted by other staff that are not part of the unit. So I think that is what the report is suggesting.
But this is not only with respect to the SPU. Is this management response not coming from the CEO? It should be a response from the account officer, primarily.
Now, response is supposed to come from management.
Yes.
But in some cases, they will give them to the being a procurement-related issue, they may have given it to the procurement people to respond.
All right, we will try to have clarification with respect to that when probably they come. Now, this third one is the procurement of furniture for new office complex. The amount is $498,500 from one fund, Fatima Sabalit Trading, through RFQ, request for quotation. Again, the procured item was not in the procurement plan, no minutes of the contracts meeting, no inspections committee, the documents 101-040 and delivery notes were not attached. But in the compliance, you have the third point that there was delivery receipt to show that the procurement was completed as stipulated. So what is the difference here? Under compliance, it indicates that there was a delivery receipt. Under non-compliance, it is saying that there was no delivery note.
They are contradictory.
Now, they responded by saying there was no plan for 2021, as I mentioned above. We were in a haste to at least have something in the office. This is the same reply, verbatim, with respect to what the reason that they gave in relation to procuring air conditions for $350,000. They are saying that they were really in a hurry to have these things in place. But regardless, it followed no due process. Is that correct?
Correct.
You have the procurement of 300 bags of rice. The amount is $195,000. Do you see that?
Yes.
Can you please run us through the non-compliance issues?
The procured item was not in the procurement plan as stipulated in Regulations 25(1) of the GPPR and Section.
So where you do not have a procurement plan, what would it be? What should have been the appropriate recommendation or the appropriate finding? Because here, if you say that it is not in the procurement plan, it probably may suggest that there is a procurement plan. Yes?
Yes, the report is suggesting that, of course, initially that there was no procurement plan. But where there is, a plan is a living document that can be adjusted at any time. So at any point, they feel that there is a need for something new, they can continue. But then in this, they have to adjust the procurement plan and ensure that the authority is informed accordingly. The adjustment should be made and then before they continue. But what the report is suggesting is that it's not in the procurement plan, but then it was not also adjusted. They continue doing the transactions, even though if it is not planned for.
Please proceed with the non-compliance findings. The second point.
Purchase order. Purchase order was not raised by the end user department as stipulated in Regulation 28 of the GPPR and Section 12(7)(b) and 2 of the GPPA Act. There was no purchase order from, that is Form 102, was not filled or filed. There were no minutes of the contrast committee for the procurement. The quotations were not open in a register or Form 004 as stipulated in Section 35(2) and 29 of the Gambia Public Procurement Regulation, 25 of the GPPR, and the specifications were not developed for this procurement. There was no inspection committee to inspect the goods as stipulated in Regulation 133 to 136. No prior approval was sought from the authority, and finally the procurement was above the threshold of single source.
Now, they made a very interesting response on page 33. Do you see that? This was all during 2020 when the management was not involved in the procurement department. Now it is all addressed. What are they saying here?
They agree that they were violating the rule by not involving the procurement in their procurement transactions. That is, procurements are being conducted by non-members of the SPU. That is, so they are agreeing to that.
Not only SPU. Here it appears as if they are saying that the management itself. So who is the management? The CEO. We know when the SPU, when they should conduct all procurement, but then there is a yardstick as to what they can do, what they should not do here and there. So, and then the approval will have to go through all the way to the committee, the contracts committee. But then if the management itself is saying the CEO or anyone in the management, they are responding that the entire management was not taking part in procurement. It was
which point is that? Because
page 33.
Yes, on the management response.
Yes, they said this was all during 2020 when the management was not involved. Was not involved in the procurement department.
Meaning
okay.
There was management,
yes,
but management was not involved
in the procurement department.
Yes.
So in here for 2020 they are saying that they didn't involve the SPU directly.
Exactly. Meaning probably the management was taking the decisions without
involving the SPU
yes,
directly.
Yes.
So the next point is procurement of digging and borehole at Samboya. Please take us to the non-findings.
The non-compliance.
Yes, the non-compliance findings.
The procured item was not in the procurement plan as stipulated in Regulation 25(1) of the GPPAR and Section 29 of the GPPA Act. Purchase order was not raised by the end user department as stipulated in Regulation 28 of the GPPAR and Section 12(7)(b) and 2 of the GPPA Act. There was no purchase order or Form 102 was not filled. There were no minutes of the contrast committee for the procurement. The quotations were not open in a register of Form 004 as stipulated in 35(2) and 29 of the Gambia Public Procurement Authority and Regulation 25 of the GPPR, and specifications were not developed for this procurement. There was no inspection committee to inspect the goods as stipulated in Regulation 133 to 136. No prior approval was sought from the authority. The procurement was above the threshold of single source. There was no evaluation report by the contrast committee, and there was no delivery receipt as stipulated in Section 35(2) of the Gambia Public Procurement Act 2018.
So single source procurement way above the threshold, 275,000 is the amount.
Yes.
Is that not correct?
Correct.
Yes, and so we again told that they did not follow due process.
Correct.
They also gave the same response that,
as I mentioned above, the PO, the procuring organization, was not involved by that time, but now she is directly involved and this issue is already addressed. The next one is the procurement of spare parts, 34,515 through single sourcing. Again, the same problems, no minutes of the contrast committee, no quotations opened, no inspections committee, no prior approval, and it was above the threshold, of course. So you have the same response from the management. You have the procurement of borehole drilling on page 35, $300,000 from one Lamin Sidikan, YMBA in bracket, through single sourcing. Again, the same total regard of the requirements. Is that not the case? Correct.
So this is the end for the 2020 and 2021 report. Honorable Commissioners, are there any questions?
What would be your assessment, Mr. Sanya, of the procurement activities and compliance?
Honorable Chair, perhaps that is even why we made that mistake of identifying a few and we deal with them, because generally it's non-compliant. If you look at all the transactions, it's non-compliant. And almost all the compliance issues are the same. That is why when it comes to identifying the specific ones, we feel like taking 1, 2, or 3, which of course at the end will give an idea of how procurements are being conducted in total.
No, Mr.
We agree that it's being underrepresented.
Let me come in there. You see, I think we have really, the question that Madam Chairperson asked does not really warrant the kind of answer you are giving. That's why I want to just really disagree with you on that part. We have already dealt with the...
What I am trying to explain is...
We have already discussed the fact that we know in all the area councils, I can tell you, that there is really a very bad practice of not following GPPA regulation. That is a fact already. You understand the requirements. For the most part, we know scores are awarded, area councils are given high scores, when in reality, this nature of the procurement in the area councils are not even up to 10 or 15% compliance. In every area you touch, you don't find any meaningful compliance in those area councils. For example, the contracts committee, they don't perform their job. It's a fact. We've already established that. Right. The SPU, they don't have even proper recording system. DG Jammeh has told us there could be many factors, ranging from incompetence to fraudulent activities or collusion. We know these things are a fact. They will come and testify here. So the general find it is an established fact that all these areas, they don't comply with them. For the most part, even as simple as having purchase orders being signed by the supplier. But then we have already agreed that the general findings only goes to, for the most part of it, lack of proper management or incompetence and so on and so forth, managerial issues. But the specific findings will now address where they are possible risks for corruption, which you have outlined in some of the reports, that it's prone to corruption. It may encourage corrupt practice. But if you give us one example, two examples, how will we know that these are the actual things that are going on? If you don't tell us there is a procurement for 2 million or $1 million for so and so and so, how would we probably scrutinize that kind of procurement in depth? So that's not an excuse.
Agreed, Council.
Yes, that's an excuse.
So generally they are non-compliant.
Yes. Please, over to you, Madam Chairperson.
Yes, I think we can look at the 2022 report.
I will need a copy for the 2022 report.
Yeah. Mr. Mbalo, can you give me my copy? Then you can check for me. That is the 2022 report. Give it to him.
Please be referred to the 2022 compliance review for Janjanbureh Area Council. The date is 18th day of April 2023. Can you let me know whether you are?
Yes, I am there.
Those in the entry meeting on page 5 would be Mr. Pasit Sise, CEO, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Idrissa Mane, I don't know what his designation is.
The position is not indicated.
Mr. Lamin Jase, Finance Director. Mr. Marietu Kande, Procurement Officer. Dauda Sama, Human HR Manager.
Acting HR Manager.
Acting HR Manager. Lamin Balde, Account Assistant. The team for GPBA is Lamin FS Sambu, Awasuso, Mohamed Sawane, and Burang Kongira. Is that correct?
Correct.
And again, you reviewed some of the key documents. These are the same documents that you will review. These are the procurement plan, the purchase requisitions, requests for quotations and tenders, approval requests, contract agreements, and so on and so forth. Is that correct?
Correct.
So, Mr. Sanyan, can you confirm for us whether they had the 2020 budget? Because what is contained on page 6 is the approved budget for 2018.
So On page what? We have
Page
budget
6.
for 2018.
Yes, page 6.
Page 6.
The documents they reviewed are listed on page 5. And at page 6, they indicated the budget, the 2018 budget, being the budget that they reviewed. So I'm asking whether you can confirm.
No, it must be an inconsistency because the report is about 2022.
Yes.
So the budget must be for 2022, yes. Not
Kindly provide that budget for us.
Pardon?
I said kindly provide that budget for us.
Okay.
Yes, Council.
Do I proceed?
Yes.
So on page 6, the staff involved in the review process for the area council is Mariatu Kande, the procurement officer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, the total procurement proceedings and their values, we have from open tender to restricted tendering, there were no transactions.
Correct.
For single sourcing, you have 657 transactions.
Yes.
The value is $1,787,000, $38.55. Is that correct?
Correct.
RFQ, 7 transactions. The amount is $315,532.
Correct.
The total number of transactions for 2022 is 664, and the value is $2,102,570. 5 portraits.
Correct.
And the team said on page 7 that all the 664 transactions were being reviewed. Do you see that? On page 7.
On page 7.
On page 7.
Yes, the review covered all the 664 transactions.
So the general findings as well. If you look at the sections for the general findings, you will see again, these are just more or less like the same findings with respect to the organogram remains the same on page 9. On page 10, the SPU is under the Director of Planning and Development, the same with respect to the previous years. Do you see that?
Correct.
And if you go to page 11, the accounting officer, the non-compliance issues are just the same as well. The failure to appoint members, failure to set up committees, and have proper documentation. They are the same with respect to the accounting officer. Do you see that on page 11?
Yes.
Now on page 12, the staff, the procurement staff and their qualification, you have Mariatu Kande and Momodu Lee. They comprise of the staff for the SPU. But the non-compliance as well, SPU probably the same as well. They don't have these reports been prepared. These purchase orders are not being signed. The evaluation criteria, they don't meet up with the requirement. So on page 14, you have a list of the contracts committee.
Yes.
You said there was an evidence to indicate that the PO has established a contracts committee, but we don't know whether they were formally appointed, as you have always outlined in your report, or whether they were appointed informally. But in the list is Pa Said Sise, Chief Executive Officer, who is the chairman of the contracts committee. You have Alaji Foon, the vice chairman, who also doubles as the vice chairman of the area council. Omar Balde, councillor. Mariatu Kande, procurement officer. Lamin Jase, finance director, and Gale Kande, councillor. Now, you are saying under compliance that the contracts committee approved all the transactions. But if you turn to page 15, we are told whether there are minutes of the contracts committee meeting. Do you know whether there are minutes of the contracts committee meeting?
Well, it's not indicated whether there are minutes.
But on page 29, with respect to the procurement of internet service, we know there were no minutes of the contracts committee meeting as well.
Page 29.
Yes. For also page 27, they procured fuel at an amount of $234,555. There were no contracts committee meetings. So one can only suggest that there are no contracts committee meetings as well for all the procurement bid conducted for 2022. No, on page 16, no disposal committee. Page 17, examination and receipt committee as well is not in place. These are usual findings. They are general findings that you find throughout.
Yes.
Is that not correct?
Correct.
Records keeping on page 18. Needless to say that they don't have a proper records keeping with respect to their filing system in relation to the procurement being conducted for the year under review. So on page 20, pre-qualification and registration of suppliers. You said on the non-compliance, on the second point, having gone through the records presented for auditing, it was discovered that some contracts were awarded to suppliers who did not register with the authority at the time of the award. Said see below, some transactions awarded to suppliers who do not renew their GPA registration. But there is no table to suggest the list or give us the list of the suppliers that failed to register for the said year under review. And we had discussed the implications therein. Do you follow, sir?
Yes.
Now, if you go to chapter 4 on page 27, with respect to the sample of transactions for the year under review, this is a report for 2022, is that not correct?
Correct.
2022. But then the introductory part suggests that the list of specific findings are for the year 2020 and 2021. Yeah, so the first on the point is the procurement of fuel for an amount of $234,505 from Dembo Jikine through single sourcing. Non-compliance, there were no minutes of the contracts committee to approve. There was no delivery receipt to show that the procurement was completed. No inspections committee. The forms were not properly administered as well. They responded by saying that, as you know, there is no fuel station around Janjanbureh. It's only Bansang and Brikama Bar. It's around 10 to 15 kilometers, so Dembo is the only fuel supply in Janjanbureh who is registered with GPA. And we are not giving him contract, but we are buying it on a daily basis. We already prepared the agreement with him. We will allow him to renew his registration with GPA and then seek approval from GPA. Now, the procurement of maintenance of air conditioner and workmanship, $5,000 is Modu Keita. again, there's true single sourcing, but they didn't follow most of the regulations. But their response is it was an emergency because it was very hot here, but nevertheless we will rectify it. How do you see that response? Is it convincing?
It's not in line with what the law says.
The law is saying emergency, and in Janjanbureh it appears to be very hot. I can attest to that fact. I'm not sure which month of the year this review was conducted or this procurement was done, but they are saying because of the heat, probably it may fall under the threatening life threshold or exception. Or are you saying the heat is not part of the exception?
Well, I was not there at the time. According to the Act, emergencies that have some life implications are acceptable. So depends on how they justify.
Maybe they are at a point where it was threatening their life. The only worry is that they don't even bother to provide justification for some of these things. For example, so if it does not follow due process, you do not send these things to the contracts committee, or maybe probably they're even involved, but let's assume it's not even sent there, and they don't even sit over these things, they don't deliberate over these issues, and of course they know if it is an issue of emergency, what to do, how to go about it. So because it's an emergency alone, or because you want individual things, that a particular solution is an emergency does not by itself give you a leeway to just procure anything and base it on your individual perception that it may fall on the emergency exception. Is that not the case?
Correct.
29, the procurement of internet at $5,700 through single sourcing. We don't know whether this 5,700, because it's internet, we don't know whether it is a monthly payment. We know how internet works, or it's just a 1 month procurement that they have done for only a specific purpose. So do you know, whether this particular procurement of internet, whether it's only for the devices that were being bought, or because it says through QCell. The QCell is a contractor. So what is the nature of this particular procurement? Do you have an idea?
No idea at least.
Can you find out and give us more detail about details about this particular procurement?
Okay.
But they said that this is due to router refilling for the IFMI system. What is a router refilling? What do you understand by that?
Actually, I think they must have routers, and then these are periodically charged with credit or whatsoever, I believe.
Now, the next one is the procurement of 10 bags of sugar, 50 kilograms. The amount is $20,600. Now, can you tell us the non-findings on that?
Come again?
On page 29.
Yes.
The last
procurement of 10 bags of
items.
Sugar. The non-compliance issues.
Yes.
The procured item was not in the procurement plan as stipulated in Regulation 25(1) of the GPPR and Section 29 of the GPPA Act. Purchase order was not raised by the end user department as stipulated in Regulation 28 of the GPPR and Section 12(7)(b) and 2 of the GPPA. There was no purchase order, and that is Form 102. It was not filled. There was no minute of the contracts committee for the procurement. There was no inspection committee to inspect the goods as stipulated in Regulation 133 to 136. No prior approval was sought from the authority. The procurement was above the threshold of single source. There was no evaluation report by the contracts committee, and there was no delivery receipt as stipulated in section 35(2) of the GPPA Act.
The procurement of plumbing material, the amount is $8,450 from one Usman and Sons through a single sourcing. The same problems with respect to non-compliance, but they said they will note and rectify. The next is the procurement of land. The amount is $150,000 from one Yahya Jammeh. Again, this was not in the procurement plan. There was no purchase order raised by the end user. There were no minutes of the contracts committee, no prior approval. Of course, it is above the threshold. They said this was a donation given to Bansang TDC and all documents were attached. I don't understand. If this is a donation from the Bansang TDC, so I'm not sure whether they meant the VDC or TDC, but let's say TDC. I don't know what it means, but why do you now have an amount that was paid for it?
I'm not very sure about this transaction, but if it is a donation given to the council by Bansang VDC, it comes under public funds. So if they want to use those funds, obviously they should go by what the law provides for. Donations can be categorized under public funds because they are given on behalf of the public.
I have the procurement of maintenance of laptop, $18,000 from Sahara Stationery. The procured item was not in the procurement plan. The procured order was not raised. There were no minutes. The specifications were not developed. There was no inspections committee. There was no evaluation report. Now they said we bought a laptop from Sahara in 2021 and the screen got a problem. It needs to be changed. We thought it, let me try and read my own way. So we bought a laptop from Sahara in 2021 and then the screen got a problem. That's what they are trying to say. So the screen needed to be changed, and therefore they took it back to Sahara to change the screen. That was the value or the amount that they spent on changing the screen. The amount is $18,000 because they took the laptop all the way to Nigeria to fix it.
Nigeria to fix it.
That was how bad the laptop was. It has to be flown to Nigeria, Mr. Sayang. Maybe for treatment. I see people traveling for medical checkups. Maybe the same thing that they are doing with the laptop. Apparently, maybe they will provide better explanation when they come. So I wouldn't even ask you whether this reason is a justifiable reason, because at some point this is what happens when you don't follow due process. At some point you don't even know the excuses you have to give in relation to some of the total disregard of the regulation, and not only a total disregard of the regulations, but the purpose of which probably is to enrich oneself. That's the only reason. Yeah, because it's the first time I'm hearing a laptop being flown out of the country for it to be fixed. So, Madam Chairperson, that's the end for the 2022 report for Janjanbureh Area Council. Funnily enough, it ended with a laptop being flown overseas for treatment, Madam Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Mr. Sanyang, it is noted on page 34.
Page 34?
Yes, that the 2022 report denotes that they are fairly compliant with all the rules and the regulations of the GPPA. Is that what we have seen, going by what we have treated?
Honorable Chair, going by the report with all what we have seen in terms of non-compliance and the like, I want to believe that 50 is on the high side in terms of rating.
Thank you. This is a convenient point to stop for prayers and lunch. We will resume after 1 hour 30 minutes. We may rise.